Welcome everyone on this beautiful afternoon in New York City. And I know that there are people calling in from other places as well. But we really appreciate you joining us. Stella and I are very excited to be launching this book that just came out a couple of weeks ago. And as you can see here, this is the book cover in very contemporary colors, the yellow and blue, in the spirit of the times. And we want to share with you today why we wrote this book and what's in it. And we also have some specific surprises and treats for those who took the time from your busy schedule and join us here. So just a couple of words about ourselves. Most of you on the call know who we are. I'm Tavis, and I am the academic director for human capital management programs at New York University School of Professional Studies, looking after all the programs that have to do with humans at work. And my colleague, Stela Lupushor. Stella.
Hello, my name is Stela Lupushor. I'm the proud co-author of the book with Anna, and I'm also an adjunct faculty at NYU, teaching design thinking, or the digital workplace design and design thinking in the certificate program, as well as some of the additional courses such as Capstone. And I think both the professional lens and the academic lens gives us such a interesting and unique perspective to observe the humans at work, as well as use the opportunity of teaching as a way to influence the mindset of the next generation of HR leaders that are going to design these workplaces for all of us.
Thank you, Stella. Indeed, the question is why together? Why write a book as a team? Because of the tensions, because of the complementarity of our skill sets, our perspectives, which I think generate a much more interesting product in the long run, where you can get both the storytelling that we really wanted to embed in this, in exploring this topic, as well as some of the very practical and what we think implement frameworks that will help you implement, new initiatives and really look at the workplace where you are from a little bit of a renewed and fresh perspective. So just a few words about the logistics. The way we structured this presentation was it really, as we agreed, was really to give you some sense and a direction of where the book is going, how it's structured, etc., but also give you a practical taste of what it feels like and what it looks like to do a little bit of a research on the workplace. So we embedded in this presentation some activity for all of you, and there will be a benefit at the end. We're going to write up what you collectively in this open source format contributed to this book launch. And all of it will come to you at the end in a few days in a way of a recording, the analytics on, who was here and how you feel about work. So we think that this will make this presentation somewhat unique. And again, as a incentive at the end, everyone on the call will receive a discount code on the book, of course. So why the book? First of all, we feel that now is a really critical time. It's a historical milestone why we need to look at work differently. We just lived through a global experiment, unprecedented in its scale and scope. And all of a sudden, work became the center of everyone's attention. clearly there's always been research done. There were experts in the field. There were programs like ours at NYU focused on the workplace. But with the pandemic, when all of a sudden everyone's work moved to their office, to their home offices at best, to the kitchens, to the bathrooms, to the bedrooms in their homes, people started thinking about work differently. And at the same time, you know, what's been changing, this pandemic and the massive shift to working from home generated a huge acceleration. It was an engine of acceleration for technologies that allowed us to work very productively remotely, away from the traditional office. And that scale and scope is what is now driving at the massive transformation of the workplace that will continue to happen. We're still in the middle of it. And what we did in the book, we asked a lot of questions, provided some of the preliminary answers, but clearly we're living this experiment as we speak. In the next slide, I just want to quote a line from the letter to the CEOs that Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, the largest asset manager in the world, wrote to all of their clients and investors. And it is a letter that is considered to be setting the real pace for the trends in the transformation of the business. So no relationship has been changed more by the pandemic than the one between employers and employees. And that a work contract that we all know about when we join organizations, when we get jobs, all of this is being now reimagined, reconsidered, reshaped, reformed, and reframed. So the conclusion from all of this is that there's an urgency behind this mandate. Companies that are not adjusting, and organizations, obviously Larry Fink is referring to private sector, but we would say all organizations that are not adjusting to this new reality, new employment contract between employers and employees, will have to pay, a very dear price. And we've already seen it in what became known as the Great Resignation. So the reasons, I think, are pretty clear, and that is one of the points why we decided to focus in this book on some of the key elements of the workplace. And we will talk to you about the model that we created. So when it comes to hybrid, because that's in the subtitle, when it comes to hybrid, clearly there's a lot of discussion around what hybrid really stands for, why hybrid, how urgent it is. And the metaphor that we want to propose is that one of a dial. This was actually this dial, from 1 to 6 scale of the hybrid workplace, was used by Microsoft to identify at what point they wanted to have their employees back. And we think that that might be a good, again, model to use when we think about different types of organizations, different businesses, and actually even different types of work arrangements that people have, depending on the nature of that work, how remote or how on-site these arrangements need to be made. And the next one, I actually love this quote again from the founders of one of those hybrid workplaces, and I'll describe a little bit about this ecosystem that emerged. When disaster struck, work from home save the day, but work from anywhere will win the decade. So it really is about not just about working from home. We often think about hybrid as working from home and working in the office. There are multiple variations on that working from anywhere theme that we are discussing in the book. And here you just see a sampling of various services. Again, that was such a big trigger for innovation that emerged, different arrangements, hybrids between Airbnb model and WeWork that we all know so well, and different locations around the city, around the country, and even globally. So when we talk about hybrid, we're discussing a broad range of different arrangements and opportunities that the companies are just beginning to consider, because we're still think in the majority of cases of the option between home and office. So the next one, just really quickly, this is just a very brief intro into how we approached it, but the book was structured around what we call 4 W's and 3 supporting W's. The 4 W's and the chapters and the big parts of the book are around discussions of work, workforce, workplace, and worth. When I say worth, people always ask what that is and ask me what is the 4th one. Worth is really about the purpose. Worth is about the meaning of work and why we actually show up. All of those 4 W's are shifting, transforming themselves, and we need to understand what's happening and how we could be on the winning side of this transformation. And then on the 3 W's, worker journeys, worker experience design, and work tech. All of those coming together. And Stella, you take it from here and explain what those 7 W's represent.
Thank you so much, Anna. So the 4+3 framework is really a way to rethink and reframe how we look at the puzzle of work. It's not about transforming or changing dramatically. It's really taking a step back and thinking, what are the barriers or limitations that get in the way of us orchestrating work differently? So the 4 W's are really about that. And the enabling W's are additional methodologies to support and accelerate the transformation. So if we take it one by one, at the high level, we in organizations hire people based on a job description, and rarely the job description will be 100% accurate or really reflect what needs to get done. So our first framework is re-examining what are the units of work that need to be done, and look at different characteristics, be that the type of skills, the location where the work is to be performed, the kinds of capabilities that are required, or maybe licensing and credentials that are very specific to the ability to perform that activity, and the types of constraints that are associated with that work, because that then will inform the workforce that can perform that activity. And the intentional use of the word workforce is describing the spectrum of workers that we can tap into, and that can be regular employees, that can be part-time contingent workers, that can be freelancers, that can be teams of people, that can be ventures that we can strike to bring resources, skills, and capabilities to do that work. So once we understand what the work is and what the most optimal worker that can do that work, then we can think about the workplace. And workplace, again, we have a whole spectrum. It's not necessarily just the office space or the home room, but it can be working at a co-working space, at a client site, in a virtual reality. So again, the choice is not dependent on the binary decision making, but it's more of a, what is the most optimal work environment for the work and workforce pair to perform that activity. And also the fact that technology is expanding and enabling a lot of that orchestration, it's important also to keep in mind that whatever choice we make as far as the workplace, it has to be consistent. So the experience across different workplace choices has to be consistent and access. And then the worth is really the value exchange, as Anna was mentioning. And what is it that we as workers expect, and what is it that we as an organization expect, and how might we bring those two closer together? And we have a little mini exercise that will dive a little deeper into that. So when it comes to the worker journey, this is really looking holistically at the end-to-end experience, not through the HR process lens, but through the worker lens. What it's like to be a worker from the moment when I wake up until I decide to come to work, until I get through the login screens, until I do the work, until I leave the office or whatever workplace I am part of. And then how might we as an organization minimize the hassle points to create opportunities for people to perform and bring their talent, and not necessarily have friction with the multiple systems, or systems that don't work, or inconveniences that they may run into during the day. Workplace experience design, it's nothing more than using design thinking principles and bringing it to the world of HR. So it's the same kind of human centricity, the same kind of building empathy for the end user, and creating a work environment and an experience for them where they can bring their best to the work. The last one, enabling technologies, is the work tech. And there is a distinction between work tech and HR tech. So HR tech, at least in my mind, is really enabling the HR processes and helping HR provide more efficiency and better experience with interaction with the HR processes. Work tech is really structured around the work environment and around the worker experience. And it can be tools that enable productivity, or enable deconstructing the jobs into work activities, and then doing that intelligent mapping to the adequate workforce mix. It can be expanding your physical or digital work reality or workplace through sensors, through immersive experiences. It is also something that can enable that value building, be that through recognizing your credential, building your digital persona, and leaving a more impressive digital footprint, or acquiring badges. So it's all around the 4 Ws that we now have a whole new portfolio of technologies that can simplify and enhance the worker experience. Anna, any other comments on this framework before we dive into the exercise?
No, I think it will all come into focus when you do the exercise with us, and you will understand, and we will do a little debrief afterward to bring these concepts closer home.
All right. So what we'll do now, we will switch to Miro. You will see this screen, and I'd love, Nicole, if possible, to share through the Q&A or through the chat the link to the Miro board. So when you see that link, please click on it. It should allow you to enter without any problems. And I will be able to see you coming in, hopefully appearing. There you are. There's a first pioneer, visiting pioneer.
Those of you who just want to observe, that's also an option.
Yeah.
But if you want to jump in, we need just a few of you to join so that we can show how all of this works.
Okay. So a few basic navigational tips for Miro. You probably will have this screen where you'll have a little arrow. If you click on it once, it will become a little hand that allows you to move the board. You click on it again, it allows you to edit different objects. The objects that you care about are these post-its. So if you need to see or zoom in or zoom out, you can use the navigational bar on the bottom right. You can click minus or plus to zoom in. This little map also allows you to move around the board. But don't worry about the navigation other than the zoom. I will use the mirror capabilities to bring you to the screen you need to be at. So let's practice by entering your name on the little post-its. Okay, looks like we have 20 people who entered. And one little trick, if you get overwhelmed by too many names and too many cursors showing up, on the top right, there is a little arrow that you can click on that says show collaborators cursors. If you click on it again, it will hide it. This way you don't have all of these cursors moving around the screen. Hi, Roy. Hi, Sergio. Hi, Chantal. Hi, Mona Lisa. Hi, Nazira. Hi, Nick. Hi, Leslie. Hi, Angela. Hi, Hung. Hi, Solange. Hi, Lisa. Nicole. Susan. Lori. Excellent. Jessica. Great to see all of you. It looks like you are comfortable with using Mira. All right. So the next thing what we'll do is go to a little bit more in-depth conversation. So the question to you is why you work. So type into any of the boxes why you work. What is the why of your work? Sense of purpose and money to live a good life. No need for LOL. We all do that. For fun. To make a difference. To make a positive impact. To grow. Purpose and creativity. To bring meaning to my life, self-fulfillment, to learn, to feel productive, yes, to have something to do during the day, to create positive and productive workplaces, satisfaction, purpose and service-driven, advance the career, teach others, solve problems. Who doesn't? Even if they are minor, there is something about accomplishing things, solving the problem, learning or helping others to learn. To help others succeed. Positive impact, money to live. Yes, let's not discard that. It may seem materialistic, but we all need sustenance and ability to pay our bills at the end of the month. Teaching is my vocation. What's interesting, and I don't know, Anna, if you see this too, but a lot of it falls under several buckets, right? One is this basic needs and the need to have an income, to solve problems, to make money, to learn. And there is a lot more proportionately of the kind of a bigger meaning, vocation, ability to change and make an impact, to change the world, to be valuable. Yes. Excellent. All right, so now let's move to the next question. What is work to you? We now understand what is the why, but what is it? Activity, yes. Making workplaces better. Creating, yes, it's creative work. What I do between waking and sleeping. Well, I bet there is some processing that is happening while you sleep too. People who do that type of schedule have to solve problems in sleep, solving challenging problems, theorizing the world, developing new ideas and frames, creating input, moving things along to meet goals. Yeah, sometimes checking the box, it's as good of a definition of what that work unit could be. Interesting, a place to develop solutions. So work is not just a physical or mental action, but it's also a place, a destination, right? So it has multiple meanings, including a physical definition of what work is. So if I am to summarize, at least what I hear is work is really our ability to create value. Create value, be that to the society, right? Or for ourselves, or for the people around us, right? So if we are to think about the notion of value, really is the capacity of a good or a service or activity to satisfy the need or provide a benefit to either a person or another entity. And when we take that notion of value to the concept of organizations, right? Organizations create value by delivering something to the stakeholders. And the stakeholders are, yes, shareholders, and they have a very long period of primacy, but it's also other stakeholders involved in the ecosystem, and that's suppliers, that's partners that are part of the value chain, that's workers and workforce, that's the community where company operates, that's the environment that gets impacted by pollution or by the traffic or by the investment in sustainable energy sources. So at the core, value is really a two-way proposition, and it's in the eye of the beholder. And I think when it comes to tangible value, when it comes to bottom line impact, when it comes to growing the revenue, growing the number of customers we have, it's relatively easier to count and quantify. And we have accounting system, we have financial system to keep track of those. When it comes to intangible values, which are employee well-being, which is impact on the community that gets decimated if companies leave, impact on the family structures that may be impacted as a result of unemployment. All of those, it's relatively more difficult to measure and track. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I look at it as an opportunity. From a HR perspective, we have the opportunity to start quantifying that value. And we have the data and analytics and ability to inform the leaders on the impact of some of the decisions as it relates to intangible values. All right, so now that we've untangled the work, and you can keep adding to it, you'll have access to this board afterwards, so you can go back and kind of think about or look at what others answered. So let's move to the next one. We talked about that worker journey in the last slide. This is what it really kind of visually represents in our mind. So it is really the experience of the worker from the point where they don't know anything about the brand until they discover, until they decide to bring their talent to the company. When they do their experience as a candidate has different pathways. They may get a job offer, or they may not, or they may even get ghosted. All of those form impressions about the company, about interaction with the company, or what it might be when you come to work there. Even when they come to the workplace, there is a lot of activities that may not necessarily be part of the HR's pursuit or purview. And they all shape employees' experience, right? They shape how they get equipped, whether their equipment works, whether their manager are supportive, whether they like working with their team. So all of these forms a collective impression that we can call employee experience or workplace experience. Even when they leave the organization, they still have a relationship. They may recommend us to their family, whether it's a nice place to work, or they may decide to come back as a contractor, or they may decide to come back as a boomerang employee. So it's important to look at the journey holistically and consider the friction points or interventions where you can have a positive impact that helps both the individual and the organization to maximize either the experience or value that they get out of this relationship. All right, so let's move to the topic of values. When it comes to values, there are certain things that are kind of basic, fundamental, right? We all expect to come work for a company that provides a safe work environment, or complies with the regulatory requirements, or provides us with family sustaining jobs that we can actually raise a family. When it goes above those fundamentals, it gets a lot more complicated, right? Some people come for their ability to have an impact, or maybe create stability for their life at that stage, maybe work for an environment where they can grow their skills, or they can belong to a community of really smart people. Oops. Maybe they want to leave a legacy or attain a status. So all of those elements have different importance, or people place different importance on them. And it's, as an organization, really difficult to deliver on everything, right? Some organizations may only be able to accomplish 1, 2, or 3, but what's important is to pick what those are and then build those into every decision that we're making regarding employees' experience, right? If they expect the organization to have transparent communications, and then they come in and that doesn't match what they've expected, or they during the courtship period, obviously their experience will be diminished, and more likely than not, over time, they will start accumulating those negative impressions. And at some point in time, they will decide to either disengage or leave altogether. So what we have next is a mini exercise that you will vote. You personally will be assessing the values and what's important to you. So a few things before I start the voting. There are multiple little cards, and if you zoom in on each, you'll see a little circle on the right. So you can open it up, and here you will see the definition of that value and a couple of examples, 1 or 2. So if you want to get yourself a little bit more familiar with the details behind each, although the description should be pretty straightforward, but you can get a little bit more details if you are not clear what that is. And the exercise will be to use 3 votes each one of you get, and then click and vote for the one that you believe are critical for you to get in the workplace. So what should workplace really provide you as an individual in exchange for you coming and bringing your talent? So let's set the voting, and let's give 5 minutes and 3 votes, and you'll be able to vote on the cards. And let me select the area. All right, and off to the races. So the way to vote is, once the voting has started, hopefully you will see little pluses at the bottom right corner of the card. Just click on that plus, so that will give a vote to that little card. So I'll stay quiet for a little so you can concentrate and read and make your decisions. And Nicole or Anna, is there any questions that people may be asking in the chat, since I'm not looking at the chat?
Yeah, we're going to answer questions after the exercise. Okay.
It's mostly about the use of the voting capabilities. Yes. So
Yeah.
hold any other questions for later.
It seems like we have 29 people participating. Others are observing, and we do encourage you to stay on to see how the voting ends up being.
Yeah.
But for about half of the people who are not participating in the voting, just hold your breath. We're going to see what comes out with the rest of the group.
It's your opportunity to let the world know what matters to you. And I think that's one other encouragement that we would like to make. Is it's important to express the big and many times the little things that you value. And the more you can communicate and encourage others, the more a manager will know how to support you, or the organization as a whole, how to support your needs. Okay, we have 15 participants and 3 more minutes.
And for those who are not voting, this is just one of the many ways in which this data is being collected in the type of research. One of the tools that could be used and is broadly used right now by organizations to really tap into the temperature of what employees are thinking, what they're feeling, and how to get to know who your people are. That works for managers, that works for leaders.
All right, we have 18 out of 22. Thank you.
Okay, the clock is going, so we're approaching the end, and let's see where we end up, Stella.
Yes. And those of you who actually come up with a new value that we might have missed, feel free to take a post-it and drag it here and add it to the list, so we can look into that and do a little more research and continue to expand the knowledge of everyone with it. Okay, so it looks like 19 people participated out of 22. And I think we can end the session just so we can all get the satisfaction of seeing what the votes look like.
Okay. Melissa is saying that the chart doesn't allow to change your vote once you've done it.
Yeah.
Not at this point. But we'll just go with it because this is just an experiment. So, Stella.
So we have mastery and expertise, 7 votes. We have ability to make money, 6 votes. Social responsibility. Interesting that that came to the top. So we have the tie of 6 votes between the make money, social responsibility, ethical organization, fair remuneration, and then it dwindles from there. So we have the next one, direct impact on the outcomes. So this is the ability to have a direct contribution and see how what you do gets perceived. Flexibility. Interesting, only 3 votes. I would have expected this to come to higher up, but I guess a lot of us are still in a flexible mode at this time, so maybe that's not as acute. Listening, yes, we want to have a voice. We want to be able to influence decisions and the programs that get imposed on us. The beautiful thing is we in HR, if you are an HR professional, have the ability to have that voice and have the influence over that experience and listen and help transform the experience for the employees. Transparency, yes, we do expect more, and I think with more and more disclosure requirements and more of the human capital measurements or focus on human capital measurements, it's inevitable that both internally and externally it'll be a lot more, there will be a lot more visibility as far as how organization treats its employees. What else? Motivation. Yes, we want to accomplish goal. We want to have something bigger than ourselves to work on. Safety. Yes, it should be a fundamental thing, one would hope. But many times that's exactly not the case, especially for frontlines or those who were exposed to unsafe conditions at work in the past couple of years. Meeting employment values, brand promise. Yes, that disconnect between what the company espouses to be versus what employees find is what creates the beginning of that dissatisfaction. So it could be one of those low humming noises that over time becomes bigger and bigger until people decide to leave. I love this sense of organization. Yes, we want to have the tools and resources to do our work, as opposed to fighting with all the systems and infrastructure and technologies that may not necessarily be effective and efficient. Yes, and accessibility is a must. And it's not accessibility only for the benefit of people with disabilities, but if we design for those, for everyone, for edge cases, we will make the world better for everyone and the workplace better for everyone. And if we think about the experience of the past couple of years, we designed an environment and we quickly adapted to a very flexible way of working. And it's not only allowed organizations to continue to operate, but all of us to recognize that we can integrate work and life, and we can be as productive as we can, regardless of where we work out of. And we now have somewhat of a bigger control over the schedule, whether we need to pick up the children after school, so we can fuse the two without necessarily having to sacrifice one over the other. So it looks like it's very consistent with a lot of other themes that we've seen as we were doing research for the book. Anna, any other comments on the? Yeah.
No, I think this is just to give everyone a taste, and I want to get us back to so what does that all mean? Yes, let's stay with this. This is just a snapshot for you of how some of the research has been done, but the book is structured in such a way that you're going to see the chapters that tell the story, the chapters that sometimes take you all the way back to the Stoics if it's relevant, through kind of the evolution of various concepts. It gives you a perspective on how these clusters of W's came together and how it all kind of converged on this time in the pandemic. We have one question that was just excellent from Mark Schulman here, is saying that the question is about, this is came about as a result of COVID, this acceleration, this fast forward response. And the question is whether these issues have been sort of dormant all the time, and they just surfaced because of this accelerator experience that we had. And Mark, absolutely, we feel that a lot of these trends have been percolating in the system for quite some time. But the technology, and we just demonstrated to you a very simple way of touching, the kind of the temperature, measuring the temperature of a team, of an organization, of a group, in a meeting, et cetera. Those tools have become available to us, and therefore the information delivery to the leaders, to the managers, to the organizational framers, to the boards has accelerated. We do believe that this technology and this combustion engine of technology and data is going to drive and continue to drive the transformation of the workforce and workplace and the work itself, as well as the worth. So that's kind of how it all came together for us. Again, in the book, you're going to find the rich stories of how different companies are doing it, how individuals are dealing with it, how We also profiled some leaders who are very much acting in the spirit of the times, based on Larry Fink quote that I presented here. And we try to make this a narrative of the book vibrant and relatable. And then at the end, you are going to get all of these very, very useful tools that you can then say, okay, here's how it may break down for us, and here's how we might want to implement one or two or three of these the recommendations. But as a system that Stella and I worked on together, we feel that it makes a lot of sense for us to develop these frameworks, because we get overwhelmed with the media, with different stories, reports, trying to make sense of it. So when you go out of here, definitely read the book, but also think about work, workforce, workplace, and worth as four very interconnected concepts, or four interconnected entities, and don't think about them separately if you want to make a significant change. So what we did at the very end, and we would love for you to post some thoughts, insights, questions that we would like to then have a discussion with you about this. But in the end, we actually very ambitiously, and Stella will tell you that I very much resisted to call this Humans at Work Manifesto, but then looking at the scale and scope of the transformation that needs to happen for us at this juncture in the development of technology, data, global pandemic, and everything else, really very, very tense time that we live through, we felt that the manifesto will be helpful for us to really align ourselves around the values that the workplace needs to be grounded in. And as you can see, we start with people. We've called people at work, workers and employees and staff, and all the different vocabulary that we kind of used to, we used to basically talk about people at work. So let's talk about people. So let's choose people over human capital. And at the very end of the manifesto, number 13, we really end it all in trust. We believe that that connection between people and trust will create a healthy, sustainable, and enjoyable workplace, and will, in the long run, take care of a lot of the frictions, hassles, and issues that all of us, I'm sure, on this call and beyond, experience when we go to work. So what we try to do here ambitiously, I admit, to look at the issues from the very, high level, and also diving deep into the history and bringing it all the way to today, looking at the tools, looking at those tools at what those tools mean to us, and then coming up with some direction that I know Stella and myself are going to be following in how we want to see the transformation of the workplace. So thank you very much for joining us today. And I'm going to see if we have any questions. Yes, by the way, everyone will receive the follow-up recording of this presentation, as well as we said, we will definitely share the charts of what you elected to be your values at work, and the discount code for the book. And you can always reach us on LinkedIn, as well as here at NYU. One more question or comment from Mark. Again, Mark, thank you so much for joining us. And Mark is saying that it was a good exercise. And the question is, based on your research, insight, experience, how have the changes created the past 2 years impacted shifts in what values matter? This is such a good question. And Stella, I will start with you, and then I will share what I think. I know you do a lot of these types of exercises with your clients, with your students. How are you seeing the shifts in values? What a great question, Mark.
Excellent question. And what's consistent is that sense of meaning and purpose. It's the ability to have an impact, to have autonomy. That hasn't changed. What became more acute in the exercises that have been done over the past year or so is that sense of well-being. I think we all recognize the importance of mental health and ability to have a safe and healthy work environment. It is also some of the fundamentals. I think the social awakening we had after the murder of George Floyd, there's all that social movement created more demand for transparency, created more demand for safe working conditions, for equal and fair pay. So some of those things that we perceived as fundamental before are coming up to the bigger demand and expectations from the people, not surprisingly.
I also want to say, and I actually wrote something about it, that the pay and fair compensation didn't go away. You know, everyone thought that we will be all aligned around higher purpose. And the question is then, to me, what's behind that? And I do think that there's so much, those of us who touch on compensation, anyone who is a manager, anyone who is a worker, anyone who is a leader, know how sensitive these types of conversations are. And to me, it's because of that value exchange. It's compensation, yes, it's about survival, right? But it is also about that compensation is a proxy for the value that organization assigns to individual workers and the value of their accomplishments, results, productivity, and oftentimes, you know, all the commitment that people make to the organizations. So it is very important for us not to be dismissive and replace and saying, you know, our organization is so purpose oriented, therefore we're not going to pay you a fair wage. That's not going to fly because we need to be mindful that by paying, you know, you can obviously have constraints, et cetera, but approach that compensation conversation very differently and very sensitively. And those of us who are in HR know how complex that whole conversation about rewards is. So that's kind of where I stand on that.
Can I pile on that? I think another complexity that I think US has not experienced to this degree in the past couple of decades is the degree of inflation. So a lot of the data and models we have to inform the competitiveness of the compensation ranges and all of those may not be keeping up with the fast-paced changes of the cost of living and affordability of things that may also put an additional pressure. So I think from conversations I had with workforce planning leaders, what became very obvious is workforce planning, it's a long-term business, but they had to plan for tomorrow or for next week. It became very in the moment, a reactive way of adapting to the reality. And I think the same kind of adaptation needs to come to a lot of other practices and processes in HR, including the compensation, and making more personalized or more differentiated rewards adjustments or compensation adjustments or investment in retention of people, because we're kind of, it's a bad time from a HR perspective, market-wise, right? There's a lot of demand, there's labor shortages, everybody has a choice, and then the inflation puts a significant pressure on the prices and the income people
Cost of
expect.
living, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Stella, can you bring us to the screen and get us out of the
Yep.
presentation? Thank you. Stephanie, first of all, Stephanie, congratulations. Thank you for joining NYU. We're so excited to have you here. And thank you for your question. The question Stephanie asked was whether there are these types of exercises that could be done by managers to help mine those experiences, to really understand their workers better, et cetera. So what could be productive arrangements around hybrid work? So what other types of exercises could be recommended to really engage on these issues and let people vote? Stella, do you want to answer that question?
So Stephanie, can I read it again?
Please.
Okay, other exercises. Yes. So absolutely, this exercise can be tailored for whatever size of the organization you have, but the rest of the frameworks have similar kinds of exercises to dive into different parts. So when you think about the work and work decomposition, right, there are different dimensions. You can take a job description from a ONET catalog and then look at the characteristics and think about the choices from a workforce perspective that can possibly be done. So it's more about ways to taking a step back and creatively thinking outside the box about the options and choices you have. I think with the demographic shifts that we're seeing, with the lower immigration rate, labor shortages are not going to go away anytime soon. So we really need to tap into some of these creative solutions to unleash and create more flexibility for managers and organizations at large.
Yeah, so the short answer to that, absolutely. And in all of these different dimensions around work, workforce, workplace, there are tools and exercises that you can use as a manager to get that information you're looking for, and also engage people. It's very engaging. It's very, especially if you do it live. We debated about this presentation. If we did it live and got people engaged, it creates a lot of energy in the room. Thank you so much, everyone. Mark, again, thank you. Stella, any finishing thoughts? And I will chime in at the end as well.
I think it's our responsibility from HR perspective, if you're in HR, to have an impact and bring this kind of thinking to the workplace. If you're not an HR professional, we all have a degree of influence. We have relationships at work. The more we can bring that human centricity, the more we will create positive impact on others, and it's contagious. I think that's the beauty of this humanizing approach. Role model it, and everybody benefits as a result of it. So
yeah, and I would say that it's not just HR. We're kind of used to speaking to certain audiences, but anyone who experiences workplace, I think what you're going to learn from what we wrote about is kind of liberating your own voice, understanding, giving you vocabulary to speak about certain issues that sometimes are difficult to describe. And also what we wanted to do is really open up the conversation about some really key issues at work that need to be on the table. They are usually discussed in the privacy of offices or at the water coolers. The pandemic made it a lot more difficult to develop those relationships in between spaces where those issues are discussed. I think one of the side effects of that was the burnout and the mental health, et cetera. Let's all remember that these conversations need to happen. People need to share. Remember, transparency was very high on the value system, and then establish that level of trust. We started with people, we ended with trust, but I think altogether it comes as a one package of being happier at work and being more yourself and more human at work. So thank you so much for your time on this lovely afternoon in New York, and we look forward to hearing from you. Please reach out, share your thoughts, and we hope to see you in other events that we're going to have. Our next department event, by the way, is going to be on the future of coaching, and it will happen in the summer on June 10th, but we are going to continue to explore these issues going forward. Very interesting times. We live in very interesting times. Thank you.
Thank you.